You had mentioned 2 years ago you got diagnosed with stage three lung cancer, or did it just
So
turn into stage three?
2 years ago, it was stage 1A without metastases. But at the most recent checkup, which includes a CAT scan and a PET scan, the tumor had doubled. And now I had one metastases in a bronchial lymph node.
That's one of the first things that comes in people's mind. Do you
Yeah.
or did you smoke?
People don't ever need to reveal their diagnosis. Some people are very private and introverted and they think you're crazy. Why would you do that? But it had been historically my brand to tell people the truth of what was going on with me authentically. When you are faced with what could be a terminal diagnosis, you are seeing the world in a different way.
How did you find out? Like, were you just healthy, or did something happen where you went to go
Yeah.
check up?
Why not make changes now instead of when you're under the threat of a surgeon's knife?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I got a great guest on here tonight. This is Chef AJ. Chef AJ, say hello to the audience.
Hello, audience. How are you? Thank you so much for having me, Paul. I look
Chef
forward to
AJ,
talking.
it's amazing that you and I have not connected in the past because I see your great interviews out there and you've been a long time in the health field. Can you briefly explain, because we're going to get more into it in the interview, but briefly introduce yourself to the audience and tell them about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you. My name is Chef AJ. Actually, AJ is fine. And I adopted a plant exclusive diet on September 1st, 1977, when I was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. Yes, it was a vegan diet, but I like the word plant exclusive, Paul, because plant-based has become very popular. And for me, plant-based does not tell me that you don't eat animals because you could ostensibly eat 51% of your calories from plants and 49% from animal products or junk food and still technically be plant-based. So I like to say I'm plant exclusive. And depending on the audience, I'm also vegan because that's really why I became vegan, was really just purely for ethical reasons. It wasn't until many years later when I got a diagnosis of pre-colon cancer on January of 2003 from eating a junk food vegan diet for 26 years that I even knew that what you eat had any impact on your health, how you look, how you feel, what diseases you get, and what diseases you can reverse. So I've been doing it 47 years, 26 of them not healthy, the last 21 very healthy, and I would say the last 15 almost Goldhammer perfect, meaning Dr. Alan Goldhammer of the True North Health Center.
Yes, I interviewed him recently. So, 47 years you've been a vegan, right?
Absolutely. I'm sure I've had animal products unknowingly. Occasionally you go to restaurants, and one time I'm getting sick, and they put chicken broth in like what was supposed to be a vegetarian pasta, but never really knowingly having animal products.
Wow. And you've interviewed so many people on your show over the years who have great information, and often the information conflicted. And I want to talk to you about that a little in a little while. But for yourself, when you were growing up, how was I know you said you had this pre-scare of colon
Yeah.
cancer, but how was your health growing up?
I mean, here's the thing. So, other than the fact that I've been asthmatic all my life, and I probably have had anxiety all my life, although I didn't call it that at the time, I think my health was pretty robust until really I was 43 years old. I was overweight as a child, actually technically obese at a time where there really were no overweight or obese children because I was born in 1960. There was usually one overweight kid per class in a class of 40 students, and that was me. But I wasn't so overweight that I was bullied or humiliated or shamed. I was just fatter than everybody else. But my mother was morbidly obese and her grandmother was. And so I come from a long line of overweight, diabetic Jewish women who have had limb amputations and things like that. So, it's funny. I did not, this is interesting. I just thought of this. I didn't get any of the childhood diseases. I never got, and I still haven't, not measles, mumps. I did get chicken pox at the age of 27. I was babysitting somebody and I did get it. And boy, let me tell you, it's no fun getting it in general, but no fun getting it as an adult. So I think my health was pretty good. Also, it's funny because, there's an old joke about Jewish people love to go to doctors. At least my mother did as she was aging. But because my grandfather was a doctor and my uncle was a doctor, I was just talking to my sister about this today. I don't really ever remember going to a doctor until I got to college and I went to the University of Pennsylvania. And that's what you did if you were sick, because if ever I was sick, my mom would call my grandpa or my uncle. What did we do? We do this. So I'd say my health was pretty good. But again, a lot of people in the plant-based world seem to think diet is important. Don't get me wrong. And I think people should eat the healthiest diet they can, which I believe is plant exclusive, whether it's cooked or raw or, things like that. There's nuances that people can tweak for themselves. However, I'm learning now that just diet alone is not enough for some people to be 100% bulletproof against all diseases all the times, whether it comes to preventing them or reversing them, because there's something that's very important in life, at least I believe it's important, and that is genetics. And Dr. Colin Campbell has said, the co-author of the China study, that genetics loads the gun. It's your diet and lifestyle that pulls the trigger. But I did not have a perfect family gene pool. There are a lot of people in my family that have had cancer and died of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, didn't get any of those, because I think that the fact that I stopped eating animals so early didn't prime the pump for me to get some of the more common lifestyle diseases or an autoimmune disease. I did become hypothyroid in my 50s, and Dr. Goldhammer has, a belief that, things like gluten and things like that can can cause that. I do remember I did get something once called, I think it was called subacute thyroiditis, and it was after that I had, but I take very, very little bit of supplement for it. And actually I went to the True North Health Center for a water fast, and my medicine was cut almost in half. So that was kind of good. So I think being an Aries, I've always been a little bit accident prone, even as a kid. I've broken my share of bones, ankles, toes, even my back. But I'd say for the most part, I feel my health has been pretty good most of my life.
And since you got into eating the healthier version of the vegan diet after you got off your junk food vegan diet, give us an example of what your diet has been like.
So I eat from primarily a few food groups, fruits, raw. I don't really cook my fruit. Occasionally, I've been known to air fry a plantain for a special recipe, but fruits, vegetables, both cooked and raw, whole grains. I do follow a gluten-free diet. At least I started in 2012 or 2010, whenever I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. I do not eat any legumes. I know people think like you're going to drop dead if you don't eat legumes because the blue zones eat them and they're in the G bombs and they're in the Daily Dozen. But I've been allergy tested many, many times, and I always come up actually allergic to them, all of them. And believe me, I would love to be able to eat tofu and all those fun things that people eat, like soy curls and garbanzo bean tuna, but I just can't. And then I'd say my favorite starch, it comes from the tuber family. So I love potatoes, but mostly I love sweet potatoes, every color. I'm not crazy about the orange, but I love the purple and I love the Hana and I love the Japanese. And to me, they taste just like cake. And man, if I had had those, growing up, maybe I wouldn't have become a sugar addict, because now when I eat sweet potatoes, I'm like, this is cake to me.
Yeah, so well, it gets, you would hope as you get healthier, it wouldn't get as confusing, but with all the people I've interviewed, many people that you know and interviewed, you got so many still differences because Hippocrates Health Institute says no fruit, Doug Graham says a lot of fruit, and then natural hygiene says one thing, and then you got the fish oil versus fatty acid oil debate with some doctors, and all these, even though these are supposedly vegan doctors, people need to understand vegan doesn't mean all the same. So, how do you, or how have you over the years tried to distinguish for your own body, like who of all these educated people with a lot of experience, clinical experience, who do you trust and listen to? How do you work through all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel that there isn't one answer for everyone, and that people, instead of following a guru, they should follow their own guru, which is their self and their body's wisdom. Because even though a specific diet may have worked well for one person, like you yourself said, you've been exclusively raw for 30 years, that might not be the best diet for a person. And when I say best, it's not so much to argue which is better, but you have to understand that there's human psychology at play. And I've always told people to do the least restrictive diet that they can do that will give them the results they seek. And so even if one diet may be superior, the fact is if you can't do it, isn't it better to do, a B plus version of a different diet than to do an F diet or the standard American diet or a junk food vegan diet? I think one of the things people don't do is they don't try the diet. They just say, well, Dr. X says, therefore it must be right. And so for me, I found true healing at a place called the True North Health Center. And I most resonate with what Dr. Alan Goldhammer teaches. And he comes from the School of Natural Hygiene. And when you think about the diet that he recommends, it's really pretty much the McDougall program for maximum weight loss, because the only difference is in the standard starch solution program, Dr. McDougall allowed flour products, salt, and sugar in small amounts. It's basically his maximum weight loss program: fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, with small amounts of nuts and seeds and avocado. And, of course, making sure that you get enough sleep, that you exercise, reduce stress, all those kind of things. I mean, really, I think the pillars of lifestyle medicine says it best. And also, you have to understand that most people are not born like Gar Goldhammer, Dr. Goldhammer's son, into eating this diet their whole life, never having, a piece of cake or some ice cream. And so people have to start where they are. Sometimes for some people, they can make the jump right away to some kind of diet, whether it's, the standard American diet or junk food vegan diet, especially if they've had some challenges. But not everybody can do that right away. Sometimes people have to transition, and sometimes people have to try different diets. But I think people need to pay attention to how they feel, not just some random number on a blood test, but how do you feel eating this way? And regardless of what you think is best, I would argue that no one needs to be eating processed food. It's their right, so I don't want to say they should be, but that is something relatively new in the timeline of human history, especially ultra processed food. And even people that teach other programs like keto or carnivore, they agree with that we really should be either minimizing greatly or completely eliminating processed food. And I'll tell you, I know people that have done that and have had tremendous health benefits in reversal of diseases just by taking out the ultra processed and processed food, even if they continue to eat animal products. And so I would argue that if you're going to eat animal products, less is best. I don't think you need any. But again, we live in a world where this is all encouraged, where people are taught that, they have to have protein, and that's fine. Do one thing at a time. I think one of the biggest things that people need to learn is that even if they eat some animal products and processed food, dairy to me is the most ridiculous thing. Like, to me, I don't get it, because no species in history, first of all, drinks milk after maturity. You're not going to see that anywhere. And no species in history, except under rare circumstances, like maybe, a mother, a nursing mother of kittens, gets killed, and so they nurse on a dog. No other species ever drinks milk of another species. And for people to really believe that milk does a body good, unless it's your mother's milk, it does nobody no good. So I think, even sometimes small changes like that can make a difference. And to speak to your point about, like, well, fruit, no fruit. A wise person once told me that whenever we have a problem, look to nature. And if you go all the way back to the Garden of Eden, if you believe in the Bible, there was an apple there. Fruit has been part of our diet throughout human history. It is not, you could argue that grains have not, because that's true. Grains came in much later, but fruit have been there forever. So to say that we're not supposed to eat fruit, I personally think that is ridiculous, especially when I know people that are type 1 diabetics, like Dr. Robbie Barbero and Dr. Cyrus Kambata, that eat primarily a fruit-based diet and have obviously not reversed, because you can't reverse type 1, but have managed it so well. And if they're using insulin, less than when they were eating other programs. But to me, I don't see a lot of people walking around that have health, like they say, I mean, not to slam people that are overweight, but I've never seen like a real overweight person walking around eating an apple. But at Costco, you do see overweight people walking around drinking a Coca-Cola. So I think to take fruit out, I can't even imagine why anybody would want to live a life without fruit. It's just, I mean, especially, if you're somebody that's trying to not eat sugar or sweets. I don't eat a tremendous amount of fruit because I like savory foods better. But to be told you can't eat fruit, to me, that just intuitively does not make sense. And I really know very, very few doctors, other than probably the two that you mentioned, that would ever think fruit is not healthy for a human.
Okay. On another topic, have you ever heard of Dr. Andreas Moretz from the
I'm
Gallbladder
sorry,
Flush?
I haven't, but I've heard of Dr. Michael Clapper, who has done a video that he thinks it's kind of bogus to drink a lot of oil, and that there's,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, Dr. Andreas Moretz, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, wrote a book called The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush years ago, and he was a very well-known author, established author. Anyway, he ended up passing away at a young age, and it's still questionable of what happened and why. And but he still has strong support followers, follow his books and his work and stuff. And because I mentioned that because you brought up Dr. McDougall, and he recently passed as well. And he had some great information out there and good information. Do you think when something like that happens, what do you think, like their teachings, like you and I were briefly discussing, I could walk across the street and get hit by a car and people are going to say, oh, it was his diet. But these people that are teaching health, it wasn't like they didn't get in an accident like that. It very well could have been something they were doing or eating or suggesting. So, what is your your opinion about this situation?
Well, I mean, I feel like just like that milk in the grocery store, we all have an expiration date and we don't know what that is. And of course, we can look to our, parents and grandparents and see how long they live. That's often a clue how long we're going to live, although they lived in a different, less toxic world than we did. I think in terms of Dr. McDougall, I think a lot of people may not know that he suffered a very massive stroke when he was 20. It's called a lacunar stroke, and a lot of people don't even recover from that stroke. He had a lifelong limp. So the fact that he got 77 years, some people would say that's absolutely amazing. But you're right, people will say if us vegans get hit by a car, it's our fault because if the diet was good enough, we'd be able to jump out of the way or something like that. So I feel like, longevity is based on a lot of things. For example, I mean, I'm questioning a lot of things from my life living in Los Angeles as long as I did, with terrible air quality. So environment plays a big role. And a lot of the doctors don't believe this, but I believe stress plays a big role too in whether or not we get certain diseases or recover or how quickly we recover or even how long we live. I don't think anyone knows. And I think a lot of people speculate. And a lot of times people look at people that have made it to a very long time and say, well, that must be it. Well, that was it for them. But if you did the exact same thing, that may not be it for you. Because how was George Burns? What did he live to?
Yeah,
105 smoking
yeah.
cigars? So therefore, should we all start smoking cigars because it got George Burns to 105? I think there's some mysteries in life and in health that may never be uncovered.
Yeah, my best friend years ago, who was on all raw diet, eating pretty similar to the way I eat, ended up getting cancer that spread real quickly in his brain and ended up passing. And there comes that time where, that self-doubt can get in. It's like, am I really doing the right thing? Because all these people that are eating healthy and that and something happens to them, and it's a point you gotta, either run or bunker down and say, no, I know what I'm doing is right. And like you say, there's these other factors.
One of the best things I heard about this, because I actually knew I was very close in the year 2000 to a raw vegan who died of pancreatic cancer, and he died very quickly. And you could argue that he had the best diet. But Dr. Simran Malhotra, you might want to interview her. She's really a lovely person, and she is what's called a cancer previvor. She had the gene for cancer, so she had all the treatment you would get if you had cancer. But one of the things she told me was that our diet, our lifestyle, our habits, this is like wearing a seatbelt. You can still wear a seatbelt and get into a car accident. So while it does increase your odds, it does not make you bulletproof. It doesn't make you immortal. I don't think people understand that the vegan diet is 100% fatal because human beings always die at some point. And so I think people would like to believe that. And I think the people that are against vegans like to point, they love it when a vegan dies early or a vegan gets a disease because it goes, see, we were right. But I don't agree with that because people die for all different reasons, all different ages.
Exactly.
I don't think it's one thing. And I think that, one of the biggest missing pieces is the impact of stress on your life. And that's why I like so much the work of people like Dr. Dean Ornish, or even, some of the people that are more metaphysical that a lot of people in the plant-based medical world will just say this is ridiculous. But people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Wayne Dyer and people like that believe that there is just more than diet, sleep, and exercise.
100%. And myself, I had ulcerative colitis when I was 19. And I know you mentioned you were Jewish, and they say, well, it runs high, and the Jewish heritage runs high with ulcerative colitis and things like that. But then they say, well, nerves had a lot to do with it. Well, you look back and say, well, Jewish people get nervous about or have anxiety about
Everything.
certain things, and maybe that could
Absolutely.
be a reason, a connection why they have more stuff from ulcerative colitis more. It's like if there's people in some island that are outside in nature more and they just happen to have skin cancer. Well, there's connections and things. So we never know, but we try to connect and figure out, well, what was it for us or somebody we know, but you
And
never
I mean,
know for sure, you know?
I knew somebody that was 15 that was raised, I think, fairly well and died of leukemia. And I knew a 2-year-old that died of cancer. So did they do something? Did they do something wrong? I
Yeah.
mean, so I feel like people are very quick to judge. And, the problem with pointing a finger at someone is that three are pointing back at you.
Yeah. And I considered my illness the best thing that ever happened to me. It really put me on this path that I'm on now, and who knows where I would be if I never got sick to really buckle up and straighten things out. And so it was a blessing. And I think when I do my retreats and interview people, I love to interview people that have overcome something because they've went through it and they know the emotional side of it, not only the physical side of it. And I'm glad I'm talking to you now, especially now, because you're going through something emotional that you just revealed a couple of nights ago. And I had no idea. Nobody had an idea. And I saw that. And this interview wasn't about that. But since I saw it and you said it's okay to address it, but you had mentioned 2 years ago you got diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer, or did it just
So
turn into stage 3?
2 years ago it was stage 1A without metastases. And we weren't keeping it quiet out of shame, but it was like there was nothing really happening. The tumor was so small, too small to biopsy. I had no symptoms. I felt, why alarm my family, friends, and audience? But at the most recent checkup, which includes a CAT scan and a PET scan, the tumor had doubled. And by doubling, that doesn't mean doubled since the last CAT scan. We're talking about doubled since the first time it was discovered. So that's called a 2-year doubling time, which of course it can change. And now I had one metastases in a bronchial lymph node. And I just felt like I owed it to my audience in case I had to go away because, I still don't know what I'm going to do for treatment or if I'm even going to do treatment. But if I do, I could be away from anywhere from 1 month to 3 months. Or when I say away, I could be at home. But if I'm not feeling well, and I might take an early retirement. And also, the truth is one of the main reasons I told people was because I'm a big believer in prayer, especially since I got cancer. I joke around. There's an old saying, there's no such thing as an atheist in a coffin. Or what do you call an atheist in a coffin? Somebody that's all dressed up with no place to go. But having now been in the cancer arena for a couple years and being in cancer support groups and hearing what the survivors say, I'm not saying there aren't atheists with cancer, but I don't know how one can be an atheist in a PET scan machine once you have cancer. And so I'm a big believer in prayer. And I thought by coming out to my audience before my surgical biopsy, which I'm very nervous about, even though the doctor has done them successfully for 29 years and he says never killed anybody and he's a man of faith himself, I wanted to ask people for their prayers. And that was another reason I wanted to do it. And so, I think for the most part, it has been mostly positive. There's always going to be people that are, haters going to hate. But the other reason I wanted to do it and is that I had found out that there's several people that are prominent vegan influencers who are also hiding, not, I don't want to say hiding, but have for whatever reason. And again, people don't ever need to reveal their diagnosis. Some people are very private and introverted and they think you're crazy. Why would you do that? But it had been historically my brand to tell people the truth of what was going on with me authentically. Like when I lost children or when I went through this terrible thing with panic disorder. So I'm not somebody that just naturally hides things, but there's several that I know that are afraid to come out because they feel it will hurt their brand or hurt their book sales. And if they don't have to come out because I'm telling them to come out, but I want people to know that there shouldn't be any shame in sharing it with your audience if that's something you choose to do, but don't not share it out of fear. Just don't share it because that's who you are and you don't want, because I find that the outpouring of love has been tremendously healing. and that my anxiety level has gone so much less after having the burden lifted off my chest of trying to keep this secret. And I want people to also maybe know and have a conversation and learn that your diet is important, but you have to understand it's not going to make you 100% bulletproof all the time for all diseases, reverse everything. And also that people should really take some of the principles. I mean, they don't have to, but the kind of things that I'm learning in a lot. I will say that even though the standard of care treatment probably lacks something to be desired, at least in my world, I haven't decided if I'm going to have it. Some of the resources that you get as a cancer patient should be available to everyone. I mean, because some of this support, like for example, just this mindfulness thing that they're teaching us, because we all know that we could die tomorrow and get hit by a bus, but I don't think most people think about it all the time. But when you are faced with what could be a terminal diagnosis, you are seeing the world in a different way. And so you really know now every moment is precious. It should have been the last 64 years, but I was so busy just trying to climb to the top of the corporate ladder or make money or do whatever. And now the gift of cancer, at least for me, is it's caused me to really slow down. And it just sounds so cliche and smell the roses. But until you can experience what I'm experiencing, it does sound trite, but it's very, very true. And so I hear from so many people because my husband and I occasionally teach business classes, help people like getting started with a vegan business. And I hear from so many people, even people that make good incomes like doctors and lawyers, how much they hate their job. I would say to everybody, now is all you have. So appreciate the moment. I mean, obviously, I know people have to work and they have to eat, and sometimes they stay with people they're married to that they don't really like. But, why not make changes now instead of when you're under the threat of a surgeon's knife? And so I think that's what cancer can teach you. And it's look, it's easier said than done, but I'm getting better and better at it every day. And it's like what has taught me is just to appreciate the ordinary. And it's like just appreciate everything, like my little dog, because she's not been well either, but it's like it's amazing how it changes you.
Absolutely. So, 2 years ago, how did you find out? Like, were you just healthy or did something happen where you went to go check
Yeah.
up?
So, and no pulmonary symptoms now. I had come home from Mexico where I have this job several times a year teaching, and I had what I felt was a UTI because I've had them before and I know what it feels like. It's kind of very painful, lower kind of abdominal, or we might call it pelvic pain. And I was new to this area of Northern California, so I had all new doctors. And I went to this doctor and I said, I think I have a UTI. And so he did the little dip thing. He goes, Oh, no, you don't have a UTI. You have ulcerative interstitial cystitis. And I'm like, what is that? And it's this horrible disease, by the way. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's an autoimmune disease. And I had written Dr. McDougall and he put me on this special diet. So for about 100 days, I suffered in agony and having these weekly bladder installations under the illusion that I had a disease that in my heart, I never felt I had. I was in support groups and I'm like, well, nothing's working. Diet, these installations, the medicine. And so what happened is I was waiting that whole time, that whole 3 months to get an appointment with my doctor at True North. And Dr. Sultana said, well, that little dipstick in the audience, in the office is not always reliable. You have to do what's called a urine culture. So he ordered a urine culture. And sure enough, I had a raging UTI. I went on antibiotics. It was gone, within a day or two after being in pain for 100 days. But during that time of thinking I had this disease, I said to my regular doctor, I said, look, I don't have this disease. I can't. It doesn't make sense. Please look somewhere else for what could be causing this pelvic pain. So they ordered a CT scan of my abdomen, which doesn't even go all the way up to the lungs, but that CT scan did pick up several 4 millimeter tumors or nodules, whatever you want to call them, in my liver and my lungs. And that would have been in August of 2022. And they said, well, don't worry about it. You'll come back March 2023 and we'll do a CT scan and then of the lung. So we did that and they found a 14 millimeter tumor that couldn't have been seen on the abdominal scan. it was spiculated. That means spiky. And then they said, don't worry. And then he said, okay, well, we'll do a PET scan. And the PET scan showed high SUV, avid, meaning it was hot. It had a lot of activity. And that's when I was diagnosed with cancer on August 5th, excuse me, April 15th, 2023.
Now, up to that point, as you're eating healthy all these years, did you get your blood work checked regularly?
Yeah, and I didn't have any markers, my CRP, I'd go for, even if I didn't need to, I'd go for a physical once a year. There was really nothing significant in any of my blood tests. And it's funny because even the blood tests that they do now, the very sensitive ones for people with cancer, for 2 years, nothing showed up. And just now, like one number that was maybe supposed to be 254 was 255. So what did show up though, because I had not had a surgical biopsy, I had what's called a liquid biopsy, and that did show, it said probable lung adenocarcinoma. So
And a person normally wouldn't just do that for a checkup on an average
no, because
basis.
it's 20,
Yeah.
because insurance doesn't pay. It's a $2,200 test. But the thing is I couldn't get an oncologist because I didn't have a tissue biopsy, and I couldn't get a tissue biopsy because everybody said, that they couldn't do it. And so I felt if I had a liquid biopsy, at least some oncologist would take pity on me and see me because look, you see, and so I finally did get one, which I guess is a mixed blessing in some ways. But the thing is, like I mentioned, all the resources related to cancer that are helping me, like the mental health ones, without a diagnosis and an oncologist, I wouldn't have really been privy to. And I'm not saying it's worth it to get cancer for that, but I will say it's the supportive services that seem to be helping me the most because I don't have symptoms of cancer. I have symptoms of anxiety from being told I have cancer, and that I'm getting a lot of help with that now, so I'm very happy that that's working for me
Sure.
now.
So when they diagnosed you originally, what were you thinking? Did you and what were you thinking? And I know you initially had something that you thought you had but didn't when you were talking to Dr. McDougall,
Mhm.
and then you had this appointment for the fasting place. So what were you thinking at that point? Did you call these doctors up and the fasting place up and said we got to speed up everything, or what were you thinking?
I was diagnosed. Again, I don't like the way they do it because they put it in your chart without even letting the doctor read it. So you have to struggle over a weekend without any doctor to interpret it. I was diagnosed because I chose to open the message on the My Health Online about 10 minutes before going live on my show. And it was like deer in the headlights. And it's like, I guess, show business, the show must go on. And so I tell this story on my channel, but the first person I called, I mean, my first thought, honestly, I mean, well, obviously was, obviously this, I'm in shock and I feel like this sucks. I'm not happy about it. But my first thought was, I'm glad it was me and not my husband, because I think I would have handled him having cancer worse than myself, and or if my dog had it. And the first person I called, most people wouldn't do this, was my stand-up comedy teacher. I had been away from comedy for years, and comedy is what makes me happiest in life, performing it. And that really was my dream, was to be a comedian. And so I called my teacher, Carrie, and I said, look, I don't have time to talk now because I got to do a show, but I've been diagnosed with cancer. So you're going to have to get me back into a class. You're going to have to start teaching again, which he did. And then the second person I called was Dr. Alan Goldhammer, and he said, well, we'll get you here as soon as possible to do a fast. So I had this still, I hadn't even told my husband by then.
Wow. So how long had before you went in to do the fast, if I'm at
So
point?
they were very full. So I think I got there in about five, let's see, this was April, May, June, July. Yeah, 5 months later. And I did my first fast, and I did another one the year later.
Now,
And
have you done any fasting prior to that?
no, I hadn't. I mean, even on Yom Kippur, I didn't really fast because, in yeah, I mean, Yom Kippur is like sundown to sundown. So I don't really think of that as fasting. I think it's
Yeah.
just skipping lunch.
Sure. So how long was the fast you did?
So the first time I only made it about 4 days, and the second time only about 3 days on water and then 3 days on broth. I got down to 100 pounds, and it was really hard for me, and my blood sugar got like 46, so they stopped it. But I got to tell you, there was so much benefit or being in a place like True North where they really care for you, they heal you, the food is amazing, the people are amazing, that I still get benefit for whenever I go. Like I said, after that first fast, my thyroid medicine was greatly reduced. And after the second fast, any issues I had, like a little bit of IBS or whatever, that was helped. So whether or not it shrinks the lung tumors, it remains to be seen because, you can't just get a CAT scan every second. So until the next one, which probably won't be until I'm guessing March or April. I don't know what effect it has, if any, but I'd rather be in a healing center though, with like-minded people than to be, in a traditional hospital getting cut open.
Sure. And it's
Yeah.
a time that that had happened. Uh, so you were on thyroid medicine at that
Yeah,
time?
and I'm still on it, but my dose was cut in half a year ago, and I'm still maintaining steadily that I need less. So I don't know if you can ever completely get off thyroid medicine, and it doesn't bother me to be on it or that I take it. I know it bothers some people that, if you were a good vegan, you wouldn't be on any medication, and it's like I think that's a little bit absurd to think that you're never going to have anything wrong with you. And I do know so many vegans, like I say, that have things wrong with them, but because of this false belief, they're not sharing it. And the thing is, with Dr. McDougall, I talked to him 2 days before he died. I saw him. There was nothing wrong with him. I mean, he had, the residual whatever he had from the stroke, the limb, but he did not have anything wrong with him. People speculated all kinds of things, but I think people should really look within instead of looking
Absolutely.
people.
What did the medical doctors tell you when you first got diagnosed? Did they say what did they tell you?
I didn't even get a medical doctor. It was so hard. It was months till I could get a medical doctor in my system, and it was really difficult because without a tissue biopsy, I couldn't get an oncologist. So I got a thoracic surgeon to see me, and he wanted to take out my left lower lobe, but he said he couldn't get clear margins, and it didn't. It just I felt like it just didn't at the time, and think even now it doesn't feel like something I want to do because that's a big lobe, and I have asthma and COPD, and I just don't. My quality of life is as important to me as the length, and so whether or not I can live without that lobe at this age and stage, and I really don't want to be on oxygen because exercise and doing the activities I do are important to me. And so he said he would monitor me. He monitor the tumor. I eventually did get to see a radiation oncologist who, at the time, but not now, was willing to do radiation without a tissue biopsy. But again, I just didn't feel it. Just the treatments, while maybe they work for some people, the side effects that you have to like sign away just to have the treatments. I'm even afraid of this biopsy because one of the side effects could be death. Now, it's very rare, but people can get a pulmonary embolism and die. Everything has a risk related. There's a cost benefit analysis. So yeah, it took a while to even get in to see doctors. Let me tell you that. And I did join a wonderful program called Chris Beat Cancer, Chris Wark's program, although I never got to post because I was hiding my diagnosis. But now that people know, I can actually get more support because I can be myself, Chef AJ, in these groups. I didn't want to create a false name and a fake Facebook, profile to just to be able to ask questions. So now I came out and I can talk about it openly. And I think people should talk about it openly if they want to.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So uh I had a question, but I just lost my mind. But I just know somebody who was on a literally on a golf course. Somebody he actually was an owner of a vegan restaurant nearby. He was on a golf course, and some crazy man came on a golf course and beat him up with his own clubs, and he passed. And you just never know. And the appreciation we have for life, sometimes we get these reminders to just slow down and just there's a lot more things important than things we think they are. And you talk a lot about that a lot. So thank you for those reminders. And so yeah, I remember my question now. So I think Christopher Reeve's wife and also Katie Couric or a husband growing up, I remembered. I think they both got diagnosed with lung cancer, but they had both never smoked. I don't know if you know that, but Christopher Reeve, the Superman actor who got paralyzed, I think his wife got lung cancer and later on, and then I think Katie Couric or from the NBC News or her husband got lung cancer, but they never smoked. So I know you mentioned you did a live the other night when you made your announcement, and one of the things you forgot to address was this question, and that's one of the first things that comes in people's mind. Do you
Yeah.
or did you smoke? So do you
Right.
want to answer
So
that? Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't mind at all because, like many people in college, I did take a puff on a cigarette. I'm not going to lie about that, but I didn't really have a smoking history, and the doctors are saying that the type I have wasn't caused by smoking. But I will say that until the age of 13, when I moved out of where I was living, I lived with three adult smokers, and they were smokers. They were smoking all the time, after dinner, before dinner. So I actually asked Dr. Greger, what does he think? What could have caused this? And that was one of the things he said is definitely a huge risk factor is secondhand smoke.
Yeah. And okay, well, everybody, I know Chef Adria is going to talk a lot of in the future of just about her progress and everything else, and everybody lift up and pray. You know what's beautiful is the comments you got under your live
Oh
of all the
yeah.
people that's just their comments were beautiful, how they survived and they've been through this and so on. They were just beautiful. And I will say, anyone that has anything negative to say about a situation like this, you definitely haven't experienced anything like this. And you should not say anything until you do experience something like this or know somebody who has, because it's not diet related or cigarette related. There's so many other factors, and sometimes we never find out those factors. But the thing is, uh, I always say, whether it's there's many tragedies in life. There's so many bankruptcy, divorce, and all these common things. But from when somebody gets diagnosed with a disease, especially a major one or something, there's nothing that alters somebody's life and perception of life like that. And in the Bible, I don't know how many of the viewers look at the Bible, but in the Bible, there's a man named Job. Have you ever read the book of Job?
I haven't read the Bible, but I do listen to it occasionally, and he had a hard life.
Yeah, please read the book of Job. It's a powerful story. And anyone out there that's watching that's been diagnosed with something, read the book of Job. It's powerful. And and we just keep you lifted up in prayer with all that. And ask you, what do you have any immediate plans with what you're doing with your interviews and everything else?
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to talk to your husband about how you're going to proceed with everything, or you?
Yeah, well, we have because I'm not a quitter, and I made commitments I do different programs and bundles and summits throughout the year, and these were all things that were uh, entered into over a year ago. So I'm going to continue doing that. I have my a class that I teach twice a year with Dr. Goldhammer and Dr. Lyle. I'm going to do it at least one more time in January, called the Ultimate Reboot Program. February, I'm hosting with Toby in Germany, Better Life Summits, the Truth About Weight Loss Summit. In March, I'm co-hosting the bundle with Lissa Maris of Raw Food Romance. And those things have been set in stage for over a year. And then that will take me to March 11th. Then on March 22nd, which is my birthday, I had planned for a year to go to Rancho La Puerta, where I work several times a year with a group to celebrate. So then April 1st, if I do get treatment, I will enter it probably then. Although I do have February off because the summit is virtual. And I am thinking of going to an integrative place that one of the plant-based doctors has, not to get conventional treatment, but to get, and it's not really alternative treatment. It's types of treatments that will optimize my immune system, things like ozone therapy and vitamin C infusions, which he feels could be extremely beneficial if in general, but especially if I do ever elect to get some type of conventional treatment like chemotherapy. So I'm thinking of doing that, and I'll be away for a month. And as far as my show, well, I've decided that I can't just, and not that I'm not saying weight loss is trivial, because it's not, because there's 13 cancers that are greatly increased with overweight. But I feel like I've taught that for so long, and I can only help people and teach calorie density for so long. So what really excites me now is just to do, I was thinking, a whole month of shows on my YouTube channel, no summit, no opt-in, completely free, that I'm going to call Thriving in the Face of Cancer, where I interview people that either have cancer, that are on the same journey as me, people that have survived cancer to give other people hope, and medical doctors or other types of, allied healthcare professionals that have helped people with cancer. So that's really what excites me right now. Like, for example, I went to get a wig, and my sister's like, "Well, why are you getting a wig? You didn't lose your hair." And it's like, well, I did lose my hair, not from chemo, but from stress. And sometimes I just want it to look good. And they do give you a free wig, like the first one free. But I remember when I was looking for a wig on my own, it's just like I couldn't find a wig because with short hair, it just didn't look that good. And the people just didn't seem very helpful. But the people in the cancer space that fit wigs, it's a whole nother arena. And it's these wonderful sisters, and one of them had cancer, and she made it her life's mission to help people with hair loss, whether it's alopecia or cancer, to find wigs that actually looked good, And so it'll be people like that. It won't be just be oncologist after oncologist, but I want to get into more of the mental, spiritual, and emotional side of healing, because I feel that while it has been in the metaphysical world for years with people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Louise Hay, it's sorely lacking in the vegan world. And so that's kind of where I'm shifting focus now. And for some people, they'll think, well, all I wanted was the recipes, and that's okay. But I really want to, if I don't like this word, but minister to the people that want to know what I'm teaching, you know.
Sure. Well, I can tell you my illness had led me to Jesus, Yeshua, and completely transformed my life and my perception of life. And so it's amazing. And for those people out there that are watching that have turned to Yeshua, you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah?
Got the 23rd Psalm right here all the time, right in front of me.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, there's a saying I heard once. It says, so there's two preachers, right? And they were on the road preaching, and one said, I'm going to get a hotel, and the other one said, I'm going to sleep in the car, and I'm going to save the people the money, and I'll sleep in a car. I won't sleep in a hotel. And the person in the hotel said, well, I'm going to save God's prophet, and I'm going to sleep in a hotel. The point being is, I know, I know you and your drive to teach the health message on every level. It's okay to slow down.
Mhm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh,
It
and
is.
I will. Like I said, I was saying, I want to get to Disneyland. I'm
Yeah.
on my way to Disney. No, I am, but I do. Again, it's different to work at a pace if you're really enjoying what you're doing, because then it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to keep you lifted up in prayer and your
Thank you.
contact information to your website and everything else. I'm going to
Just
put
my
that
name.
below in the
Yeah.
description,
Mhm.
but go ahead, give it to everyone.
That's just chefaj.com is my website. YouTube is Chef AJ. Facebook is Chef AJ. But for some reason, those were taken on Instagram and on Twitter. So I'm the real Chef AJ on those because I am the real Chef AJ.
Yes, yes. Well, just keep up the great content you're putting out. Rest as much as you need because we have so much stuff from you for over the years that, probably even if you weren't doing stuff, people can keep themselves busy looking at all of the stuff you put out. Uh,
And who knows, with AI, I could continue forever.
exactly, exactly. So just keep it up and thank you for coming on the show and
Oh,
talking
well,
about
thank
this. And
you.
yes, and everybody out there, keep Chef AJ in prayer. And thank you all for watching. Please put your comments below, and maybe we'll have her come back and answer some of your questions. Is there anything else you want to share before we end?
Hmm. Let's see. Well, eat vegetables.
Yeah.
Because, think about it, Paul. We were talking about no fruit, no this. I haven't met one dietary style yet that actually said it's, oh, that you couldn't eat vegetables. You know what I mean? I think that's the one thing people agree are probably okay to do. So eat vegetables.
Exactly. Speaking of which, have you looked into or ever heard? I'm sure you heard of Hippocrates Health Institute, but I know
Yes.
they deal with a lot of people over the years who've experienced different types and stages of cancer. Had you spoken ever to Brian Clement or
You
looked into
know,
anything
he
there?
has interviewed me a couple of times, and I was trying to get him on my show, and it never quite happened.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they have I don't want to say specialized, but most of the people go there for over the
Yeah.
years. It
Yeah.
has to do with these later stage diseases and so on. So
Is it
uh
near Disney World? Because then I'll go. I got to get to
it
Disney World.
actually is. It's about 2 hours away and
Oh
it's
my God. Well,
right.
that's a draw right there.
Yeah, yeah, it's an amazing place, and I've met a lot of people, including myself, who went there over the years and got well. So,
Nice.
whatever path you choose, uh, we're gonna just keep you lifted up and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Paul. Best of
Okay.
health to you, everyone.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Put your comments below and have a great day and a great real life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.